Hello gamers, we are going to talk about Battletech, a game of armored combat. It is a board game about giant robot combat, from the 1980s, that was relaunched recently. These giant robots are called battlemechs, or just mechs. In this video, we are going to analyze how to borrow real battlefield tactics to use in Battletech. We are going to refer to the standard game, not the beginner box, not the full set of rules of Total Warfare rulebook. If you imagine that a mech is a battleship, we will need to study basic naval doctrine. You may think that if you have an armored vehicle with heavy weapons, it is just a matter of picking a target, get into firing range, and fire upon it. This is what Napoleon's ships did, and they failed. King Henry VIII wanted to enhance fighting capabilities of Royal Navy. Spaniard Alonso de Charbas wrote Quatri Partitu, en Cosmographia Practica, known as Seaman's Glass. Henry issued instructions based on the Spanish model and improved it, turning a bunch of ships into an organized fleet during combat. After the successful Battle of Malaga, in 1704, the early concept of formations, a rigid alignment of ships, that would concentrate fire on a single target, took shape. It required discipline to keep the line. When the doctrine was not followed, defeat took place. During the Napoleonic Wars, the importance of naval formations became key for victory, and doctrine was revised to make sure that ship commanders did not have any confusions with fighting instructions. In World War II, the same concepts of naval doctrine remain very similar. In Battletech, you have a lance of 4 mechs. The heavy mech is the capital ship. If you study naval tactics, you may find ways to borrow some ideas for your tabletop game. However, remember that in Battletech you have terrain, not a flat sea, and mechs have jump jets, unlike battleships. That adds complications to implement naval tactics in Battletech. The innovative aspect of naval doctrine was the use of formations that overlap threat zones and concentrate fire on a target. Aerial combat does not provide too many tactical elements to borrow because of the tridimensional and aerodynamic nature of combat. A mech behaves more like a battleship or a tank instead of an airplane. Air combat tactics may be useful if you have aerotech fighters in your game. If you want to put all these tactics to use, using aerotech, in your Battletech board game, you will need the rules of the Total Warfare book, and you may like to use the Experimental Technical Readout 1945, both published by Catalyst Game Labs. The readout contains description of units, as well as record sheets, so you may reproduce air combat with some degree of realism. Why do I say some degree? Because air combat is about energy management, switching between potential and kinetic energy, so going too slow makes your plane to be vulnerable, or even lose lift so your plane stalls, and if you go too fast, controls will not respond very well. Those are details that would be very difficult to manage if you have a board game. And many top maneuvers rely on bringing an airplane to its limits. When you fly an airplane in combat, terrain may serve as cover, so if you fly low, it will be harder for others to spot you, but also you do not have a great chance to bail out if you are downed. If you fight against another airplane, you need to watch the enemy and also terrain, so your plane does not crash. As you can see, aerial combat is very different when compared to mech combat. With airplanes, a crash against terrain will destroy your plane. And crashing against other planes could destroy your plane too. And unlike mechs, planes cannot switch between going forward and backwards, or do a torso twist. Firing arc is always forward, and you need to have good aiming skills. What can be useful when you use mechs is the concept of having formations. A lance is composed by 4 mechs, just like a group of planes, using finger 4 or swarm formations, with 2 wings. Each wing has a leader and a wingman. The role of the wingman is to protect the leader, so if the leader gets into trouble, the wingman serves as bodyguard. Clan mechs use a star with 5 mechs, not a lance with 4 mechs. Due to the odd number of mechs, it may have about the same problems of IC formations, that were very rigid, because it limited movement on friendly planes. There are some air combat tactics that you can borrow. If you study history of aviation, you may find a clever defensive scheme when you need to defend a site. Normally you would put your mechs in standby position and wait for the enemy to come. So if you do not have terrain for cover, an enemy may hit you more easily. And as enemy approaches, it could try to hunt the most isolated or weak mech. World War II pilots developed a defensive tactic. Moving in circles, like a train in a circular railroad, if an enemy plane decides to chase one plane in the circle, there will always be a defender behind. Moving also provides the advantage of making your mechs harder to hit. Under certain conditions, this tactic may be useful to make sure all mechs are protected by friendly mechs. If you liked this video, subscribe and activate the notification bell, like this video so YouTube recommends this video to other users, and share with other people. Let us make the Battletech community bigger.
Reactor online, sensors online, weapons online, all systems nominal. Mech power-up detected.